Thank you so much for joining. Welcome. My name is Alexandria. This is our webinar, How Configurable Software Simplified Performance Management at Manatee County Sheriff's Office. So just before we get started, a couple things I want to let you know about. Please feel free to add your questions to the chat box throughout the webinar. We will have time for those at the end, and we'll get to as many as we can. Also, all these materials will be sent to you after the webinar. We're recording this, so we'll make sure that you can come back and look at it again, share it with others, anything like that. And you'll also get a bonus case study with Manatee County Sheriff's Office to accompany that, so you can print that out, share it with anyone for your reference, and it'll cover a lot of what we talked about today. So without further ado, quick introduction. I'm Alexandria Davis. It's great to meet you all. I am a product marketing manager here at NEOGOV, but I don't want to take up any more of your time, so I'm going to go ahead and pass off to our amazing speakers. We'll go ahead and start with Gary.
Well, good morning or good afternoon, all. I know we have quite a few people on here, and thank you, Alex. My name is Gary Carey. I'm the National Sales Director for NEOGOV for the state and local government team. I oversee the new business development team that covers all 50 states for our team. And then you can also see maybe on the slide here, I have a unique value proposition that I also serve as mayor of a suburban city of the Grand Rapids, Michigan area, a little city called Walker, Michigan, about 25,000 people. I've grown up in local government. My dad was in it for nearly 35 years. I believe retired as a city manager. And then two of my three kids actually are in law enforcement in the West Michigan area. So, you know, as a mayor, we don't sleep a whole lot anyway, because you're used to getting woke up late at nights. But when you have two kids in law enforcement working the same shift in the same area, it kind of holds true there as well. So I believe it's a good value proposition to be able to bring and understand some of the challenges that we are all facing there, which is why I enjoy spending time with my good friend Julie Beckwith, who is the HR leader for Manatee County Sheriff's Office. And I'd like to introduce Julie, and then we're going to transition into the presentation from there.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm super excited to be here. We recently did a case study with NEOGOV, and we were so excited when we had the opportunity to come here and talk to you guys about how we're using it. I am the HR manager. Our agency has about 850 certified employees and about 550 civilians. We are Gulf Coasters, a little bit south of Tampa, so we're enjoying the warm weather, a little bit warmer than you are up there, Gary. But we're just really excited to be here and kind of share some of our wins with NEOGOV Perform and show off all the great things that we've been able to do.
Outstanding. Well, thank you, Julie. And what we'll do is we'll transition a little bit into the background here. And really, our next slide talks a little bit about Manatee County. And Julie, I'll let you take it from here.
So like I said, we are on the Gulf Coast, a little bit south of Tampa. We have really grown in our population. I started here at the Sheriff's Office about 9 years ago, and at that time we probably only had about 363,000 people, and in the 9 years since I've been here, we're up to almost 430,000 people here. So the population that we serve has just grown so much, and you know, you need more deputies, you need more support staff, and as the population increases, you have to find ways to make your processes more efficient, just to be able to serve the needs of the community and your employees.
Outstanding. Oh, good. Thank you, Julie. And what we'll do is we'll go into the next step is we're going to go out on a limb here. We're having some technical challenges a little while ago. We're going to see how this works here, and hopefully it brings it together. But basically, as you look at the poll here, we'll just take a quick minute. We'd like to get some background here. When you think of your agency's biggest challenge when it comes to performance management, if you could just pick one of these, tracking evaluation deadlines and completions. Is it standardizing employee performance ratings? Is it managing complex evaluation processes? Or is it maybe facilitating meaningful performance feedback? And we'll give everybody a little bit, maybe about 30 seconds here to take a quick vote. Again, if you just, as you're looking at this, just pick one of the items that jumps out to you most as what your biggest challenge is. I'm sure if you like Julie with back before she came over to NEOGOV, with the high growth area in Manatee County, when you would actually look at this list, she probably was picking all 4 of them at any given time. So that should, I think, probably give us, I think, enough time there, Alex. Okay, outstanding. Tracking evaluation deadlines and completions is obviously a huge one, and there's a compliance piece around that. Facilitating meaningful performance feedback, and that's really important. And we'll talk a lot today about, it's not just recruitment, it's also retention and development piece, and it's a 3-legged stool. You need all 3 of those to be incredibly strong to support one another. Looks like next is standardizing the employee performance ratings. Employees, we know that they like consistency, like that communication, and then really a complex evaluation processes. And I think if somebody like Julie in Manatee County and all of the challenges that they have gone through over time. So thank you everybody that was able to jump on with that poll. And what we'll transition next is to the benefits of performance management. And there's a number of really key areas on here. And what I'd like to do is ask a question of Julie is, first, exploring why we're talking about performance management in the first place. And we know that efficient and effective performance management comes with many benefits. And for Julie, the question would be, why is this so important at the Manatee County Sheriff's Office?
Well, first, from the legal standpoint, right, you have to think about your accreditation standards. So there has to be standardization in your evaluation processes, your probationary process, things like that. But more than that, I think that we want to create a process where everybody can receive feedback continuously, effectively, and make it easy for our supervisors to do so. We have sergeants out there on the road that have squads of 10 or 12 people, and they've got to write all these annual evals at the same time. So what can we do in our HR department to make that process more efficient and effective? Because if you have a really difficult, complex evaluation process, you're probably not going to spend the time and energy writing a really meaningful performance evaluation for those employees, because it's just another checkbox, something else you have to get done on a list of 400 other things that have to get done that week. So we really wanted to find a way to make it easier for our employees while still making sure that they're getting that meaningful feedback in their performance and all throughout the year, for that matter.
Now, I don't know if I could sum that up any better, Julie. And one thing I think I would add on to that is we all know, whether it's in the Sheriff's Department, whether it's in the Public Works Department, the Assessor's Department, and any of our municipal agencies, the jobs are already difficult enough, and it's hard enough to recruit people, get them to stay with us, and help them grow, just because our workforce over time has been shrinking there. So really, when you look at this, the job's already difficult enough. We don't want to compound that problem by not having effective and efficient tools in the system. So great summary, Julie. Thank you so much on that end of it. As we think to the next step here, we talk about maybe even a lack of configurability. Julie, as an HR leader, you have a front row seat into your agency's performance management pain points. Let's start by talking about the biggest challenges around your old system. And our audience, might have caught when you were talking earlier when you said, the right solution can help solve your challenges. And this is a great example of that. Where a lot of agencies come from the paper-based world, you were actually using another performance management solution before, and then you switched to a public sector specific solution. So on that topic, let's dive into where you were, where you are now, and how you got there.
Oh my gosh, when I started here back in 2015, we had a archaic, to put it gently, evaluation system, and there was absolutely no automation involved in it. There was really no accountability in it either. It was up to the supervisors to create these evals, and HR just, on a whim and a prayer, hoped that these evals were getting done consistently on the probationary dates that were required. And our evals used to be 40 or 50 competencies long. So if you have an employee that's getting monthly evaluations and you're doing a 50 or 60 competency long eval, I guarantee you it's probably not as well written and meaningful as it could be for the employee. Like you said, recruiting is a real big challenge for us now. It's not the market that it was 10 years ago where we're turning people away. So it was really important for us when we had the opportunity to switch softwares to think about how can we use evaluations to create an environment with feedback and create a relationship between the managers and the employees, because retention is hard. Getting people in the door is hard. Keeping them is just as hard. So if you're getting a canned eval and you're not getting feedback and having conversations with your supervision on a consistent basis, where's that relationship to keep your loyalty? Yeah, you might go to a neighboring county because they pay $5,000 more a year. But if you have that rapport and that development and the empowerment in your career with your supervision, you're going to stick around. So that was the first thing, was how can we configure our evals to standardize them, but how can we make them more efficient and effective when we do? So I hate to say it, but there was a day back when I look at our old evals where there wasn't a lot of standardization. It used to be like, this is what it's supposed to look like, but did it actually look like that? We don't know. So a lot of times we go back and we said, this is what we did wrong. Where can we go and do it correctly in the future? And I think that when we moved out of that software, we actually went to a different software before NEOGOV. We had a 2-year contract with another company and they were great. They had bells, they had whistles, but we realized that it was not public sector friendly whatsoever. If you were a Fortune 500 company, yes, sign them up. They were fantastic. But when you have things like shift bid, a private sector company just is not geared for the types of changes that we make in law enforcement. We're very unique. Some might call us difficult, but that's okay. So we really found a gem in Perform because it was so public sector friendly that they could handle the things like shift bid. They could handle the things where they integrate with our payroll system. So when somebody's changing squads 3 times a year, there's no manual process involved in that. That just does it all for us. I mean, back in the day, we could have had a full-time evaluation program person just to handle all of the manual updates and tracking and following up with supervisors and sending out eval notices and things like that. And now the system just does all of that for us, which is such a blessing.
And I think thank you, Julie, so much there. And you hit on a topic there. It's public sector specific. We know the complexities and the nuances that we have in that state and local government sector are very different, and those needs and the nuances that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, we don't have that extra time to be trying to figure things out and do manual bolt-ons and do all those extra steps in there. So I think we have not only this slide, but then the next slide too, when you talk about the custom workflows. Does anything else come to mind that's changed since you moved to the NEOGOV Perform module?
Oh, absolutely. So it used to be up to our supervisors to assign those 4 million competencies to the evaluations, but now Perform does all of that automatically for us. So we created 3 specific job types, which are managers, which is anybody that has a subordinate, civilians, and then our certified folks. So we were able to assign the 10 appropriate competencies to each of those specific jobs, and it does all of that for us. So when that eval is due in the system, it launches automatically. It automatically assigns the appropriate competencies associated with that person's role in the agency. So there's nothing that we have to do hands-on other than initially have them roll into the system from onboard and have a nice day. So the workflows are really nice, but it's the extra things like not having to go in and assign the competencies or update the supervisors. All of that's just happening for us.
Outstanding, thank you. You can definitely hear about the benefits, but I think the most important thing is how do you get buy-in for this? And I think as a mayor, even There's so many competing interests. Every dollar can go 15 to 20 different places and make an impact. So you're looking for that biggest ROI, the biggest bang for the dollar. I guess the question on that, Julie, is since you've had software before, how did you get the initial buy-in from leadership to switch to a new performance management software? It's not necessarily that bright shiny toy. It's performance management software, and as civic leaders, we don't always see that as a high priority. So how did you work with your leadership to make sure that this was a priority and you could make that investment?
So, the public sector, the wheels turn slowly here. We don't have the budget that, you might have in the private sector to just constantly be adding programs and updating softwares and things like that. I mean, we need more staff, we need more money in every area of the agency. But when we were moving over to new performance software, obviously as HR people, we know what we want and we need out of a performance management system. But our sergeants, our lieutenants, our people out at the jail, they don't care what HR needs from the system. They want to know, how is it going to make their life easier? So for us, the most important thing to get buy-in was looking at the program, looking at performance, saying, all of these things that Perform does is wonderful, but this is how this is going to make your life easier. And if you can get people on board with saying, yes, we have to learn something new, we have to go through another implementation, nobody loves that, nobody likes having to take the time out of their already busy day to learn something new. But if at the end of the day, I can cut down the amount of time you spend doing tasks and make something like annual evaluation season easier on you, that goes a long way with your staff. And I think it's really important to check in with them all throughout the process. So you have to sit with them, you have to have round tables, you have to have discussions and say, what is it that you guys need? How are you using this? And what can we do as we're implementing this software to impact you most effectively? And I think that a lot of it was just constant conversation and presenting it in a way where they could see the value in their specific role. So the conversation I might have had with our command staff would be different than the conversation you'd have with your sergeants on the road. But I think it's really just targeting your audience at the time. And then I think a lot of it is preparing people. So you can't spring something on anybody. You have to say, this is coming, this is coming, this is coming. And then give them the tools to learn the software and feel comfortable with it. You don't ever want to just launch something and then they log in and they're lost and they're upset and they're frustrated. So pre-training, implementing, and then post-training, following up. Here's helpful handouts. Here's a training session you can come to that we're hosting so we can teach you about it. And you can really make it specific to the group that you're training. So I'm going to sit with the sergeants and I'm going to teach them how to use journal entries. I'm going to teach them how to write evals. But I'm going to show command staff, this is what you need for the promotional process when that time comes around. So it's really customizing it to your audience.
That's a depth of insight, Julie. That's so important there. You mentioned one of the things when you talk about roundtables, and it's not just bringing it to a leadership team and getting approvals in the dollars and cents. What I have seen to be really effective around the country from all the different size agencies from small to large is when you mentioned those roundtables, having those ad hoc committees that come together. And when you talk about the pain points of people most impacted by that, and grabbing a cross section of people that are there and they share how it's affecting them and some of the other things that they could be getting done if they didn't have to do all these manual tasks or extra steps in the process. And I found that to be really effective. There's a term that we all use, it's called champions from a business development perspective. And we ask, who's our champion? And a champion is somebody for me that advocates for this project or for that initiative when we're not in the room. They're the ones, we can't be every place and we can't be in some of those leadership meetings or in those hallway discussions with the people that are approving these. Those champions help get us across the finish line. Getting a cross section of those roundtables are just so important of getting the buy-in in there. And again, I'm glad that you mentioned that piece of it. We talk about doing it early and often. You can't start this enough, even if it's a 1 to 2 year process to get this going. But you really have to involve more people than I think just the leaders making the decision and and the HR department.
Absolutely.
Transitioning over to the little bit product specifically, let's talk about lack of visibility here. When we talk about, you've mentioned a couple times now about tracking and managing performance evaluations. Can you give us a little bit of a peek behind the curtain of what it used to look like in your old system?
Yeah, so there wasn't a lot of visibility, which was problematic for us. Our old system was a lot of us putting reminders on our calendars to follow up on people's probationary evals and make sure they were done. Dare I say, an Excel spreadsheet that may or may not have existed, which I will deny if anyone asks. But I mean,
nobody's watching the webinar anyway. We're fine. So
yeah, don't tell anyone. But yeah, I mean, there really wasn't accountability, and there really wasn't any visibility, which was a real problem when you're coming from an HR perspective, because when somebody's going to promote, or you're having a employee that's having performance problems, and you go back and they don't have any evals, or they don't have great documentation in their evals, you're saying, well, what am I supposed to do with this person now? Because I don't have the tools that I need that should have been getting done to do my role as human resources to take action on this performance issue. So that was a big problem for us, and Perform was a big fix for us in this way, because not only does it automate everything so we don't have to do anything with that, the evals are generated automatically, the correct competencies are assigned to it automatically, the managers get their email notifications. I'm not sending emails to anybody unless they're very overdue, which never happens, I'm sure. But I'm not chasing people down to do evals. All of those email notifications are coming out automatically. And if I do need to provide some data on how a specific group of employees are performing, or a certain bureau of performance is going on, I can just hop right into the Perform Reports section and pull that data out, export it to an Excel spreadsheet or PDF or whatever I need. And all of that information and data is there, and those evals are getting completed on time.
I always love it when it's the voice of the customer talking about how have things improved with the new system. I don't know, we could develop any marketing material better than the voice of the customer. So thanks for sharing the details there. As you were completing this, you went through and did a little evaluation. I've got to say wow, and I've got to take a pause here to reflect on these numbers, because the response rate is nothing short of unbelievable. To see those types of numbers to get I think just from a compliance perspective, engagement and adoption. So this is really incredible on a number of fronts, and I'd like to unpack some of these. The first one that comes to mind is, how did you get such a great response rate? And secondly, what impact do you think that this has made so far?
I think that having everything launch automatically, and these automated processes and these automated notifications that happen, it really was holding our managers a lot more accountable, because HR can't be everywhere all at once. We can't be holding everybody's hand and making sure that they're getting done what they need to get done. So by automating all of those notifications on those processes, things are happening without us hand holding anybody. And I think that we set up our notifications, so you're getting notifications once it's available every single day until it's complete. If it's getting overdue, then the chain of command starts getting notifications that these tasks are overdue. So it's not just HR saying you have to do this. It's coming to your email, it's your self-accountability, and then eventually it's your chain of commands accountability. So there's really no reason that things shouldn't be getting done on time. And I think a lot of it was that buy-in initially. So when we came to everyone and we said, we can do something to make your life easier, but we need you guys on board to be successful in it, they really did buy in on that. And I really think that we did make it a lot more effective and efficient for them. So the big size of, oh, I have to do another eval kind of dissipated, because we did make it so much more efficient for them to do those tasks.
I like how you went with the adoption early and often with this, but your positioning was, I can solve a problem for you, but I need something in return. And it's this little word called accountability. And, you know, accountability, everybody thinks it's this black, ominous cloud hanging over us, that, you know, I'm going to be in trouble if I don't do this. It really, you're giving them so many gains if they were just to do this. And that's, I love seeing these numbers, and the impact that it's had the organization at this point. Getting a little bit further into the some of the specific product functionality is when you talk about standardized ratings on performance evaluations, maybe a couple parts here. What were your biggest struggles and concerns around this before, and how have those been addressed by switching to the NEOGOV performance management solution?
So back when you had 60 or 70 competencies, you probably weren't getting necessarily a lot of in-depth evaluation of how someone's performing against all of those categories. So we were very specific when we implemented Perform and saying, here are the 10 competencies that we're going to rate each of our 3 groups on. And then we said, how can we handle some of the evaluation biases that people run into as supervisors? You know, you have the halo effect where, you know, somebody is right at the end of the year and they did some super great things and you're just beaming as a supervisor. Maybe they had some performance issues at the beginning of the year. So using the different tools that Perform has, you can kind of track that performance all year long. But we also made sure that we had every single competency labeled within our evaluation programs. So when that supervisor's going in and they're rating officer safety, there's a description of what that competency means to them and what they should be specifically evaluating on when relating to that competency. And then we provided comment helpers. So each rating, each competency has a good rating, a neutral rating, and a poor rating. And we give you a little excerpt right in there. We can customize those. They're fantastic. And it'll tell you if somebody's doing really well, here's some verbiage that matches that competency that you can use as a foundation for that rating. And we do that for every single competency, for every single role in this agency. And it really gives the supervisors an understanding of what we're looking for and how they should be rating on that competency.
I love that, and I love the consistency that that this brings to the standardization process. I think the one of the other components of that is the communication piece. And you know, before you mentioned earlier about that lack of communication, and it's something that's not always top of mind, but plays such a huge role in performance management, you know, between the employees and the managers. Because communication is so critical and complex at the same time, I believe we've got a few slides to dive into here in that spirit. So can you discuss a little bit, you know, first your struggles in this area before and what improvements you've seen with the performance management system to this day?
Oh, absolutely. I am a big believer in continuous feedback. That's kind of one of my babies here in HR, is constantly encouraging our employees to open up that line of communication with the supervisors, with their employees, with one another. And Perform gave us journal entries. And that was one of the coolest things that I think came along with Perform, because our supervisors are able to, in real time, send employees journal entries. They can go in there and make notes about something amazing that they did that day. They can go in there and provide constructive feedback. They can go in there and say, you know, hey, I just counseled this employee about X, Y, and Z, and they can memorialize that counseling in there in case you have a performance issue with that person later. But what it does is it just opens up that dialogue. And that dialogue and that investment from your supervisor into your employees is what's going to help you back with that retention. So we really try to encourage everybody to be going in and recording their subordinates' performance as the year goes. And Perform is really great because when you're doing all of those journal entries and that employee's getting that feedback and saying, wow, my supervisor noticed that I did X, Y, and Z today and they made a note about it. That's so fantastic. I feel great. Yes, we all receive a paycheck to be here, but everyone works for encouragement, right? Everybody likes to get that pat on the back and that extra acknowledgement that they did something great that day. It feels good. It helps foster that relationship. So you can get that feedback and build that relationship and work on retention. But at the end of the year, all of those lovely notes about what that employee did throughout the year are right there in the evaluation program. So it's another tool for supervisors to make that evaluation process easier, because rather than go to some Word document that they have stuffed in a desktop folder somewhere for 14 people and try to find notes that they haphazardly made throughout the year about things that employee did well or poorly, it's going to be all right there available for you in the evaluation program. They can drag and drop right into the eval. And we also encourage employees to do the same thing. You know, if you did something great, maybe your supervisor didn't have a chance to, you know, give you a pat on the back about it or wasn't around, you can go in there and make notes about your own performance. So you're accountable for your recognition as well, so that when the end of the year rolls around and your supervisor is writing your eval, all of your accomplishments, all of your accolades are there and available for them to put into that evaluation, so that you feel recognized for all of the hard work that you've done.
Just tremendous insight there. One of the things just made me think of, when we think of our workforce nowadays, safe to say that we have more different generational impacts than we've ever had in our career before within our workforce. And we have parts of our workforce that really are I would say, requiring more consistent feedback. How am I doing? Where am I at? You know, maybe hopefully they've let us know where they want to go at this point, but we have to let them know where they're at on that journey, so we make sure that we're following that roadmap of where we want to go, how we're going to get there is, you know, what we're working on together. Do you feel like maybe even a generational aspect, that the frequency and maybe the frequency, consistency, and depth of communication has helped with the morale and the engagement with the different parts of our workforce?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that, as you're absolutely right, as generations change, I think that we're all just, with social media and everything, in each other's face all the time now. So you get used to that constant interaction. So if you have a supervisor that's not engaging with you and you're not getting any feedback or, you know, any criticisms or accolades from that supervisor, you don't really know how you're doing. And it's something different for the younger generation, because they're used to that constant interaction and that constant feedback. So I definitely think that it does make a difference. And you know, I think about sometimes at the end of the year, you'll get that employee that, or I should say, it used to be, you would get that employee at the end of the year that would be surprised by their eval. And maybe it wasn't the greatest eval. And they would come to HR and they would say, I had no idea I was doing poorly. My supervisor never said anything. I didn't know. And I really think that Perform has done a great job of alleviating that with those journal entries, because those supervisors are documenting your performance once a week or twice a week or whenever something important happens, so that at the end of the year, you get that eval and you're not going, I sure wish I had heard that 11 months ago so I could have worked on it. So it really has changed the way that our supervision and our employees interact, and the conversation about how their performance is throughout the entire year.
No, and I'm glad you shared that. You know, the worst thing you can ever get to is that point where you're doing that evaluation, that review, and whether it's a quarterly or an annual basis, and the employee thinks that they're here and we have them rated here, and we're both surprised why we thought that. This really mitigates our risk around that. And then I think the second component, I'm glad you mentioned about the social media piece. We live in a world of likes, loves, and shares and all of that nowadays, and that consistency of feedback, I don't think is hoped for or looked for. I think it's really required of us nowadays, and that's what the journal entry piece, to me, solves that problem of, you know where you're at, that feedback is consistent, and you understand the areas you're doing great in, and maybe the areas you have to work on a little bit. So really good insight there, Julie, from your perspective. Transition to the next thing. This one has me really excited. One thing that's key to finding success with performance management software is adoption by by organizations and agencies, employees, and managers. you started an great initiative to help with this, specifically around the journal entries and the ongoing feedback. The best part of this topic is this is not a NEOGOV marketing material. We do a great job with that stuff, by the way, but this is from the customer. It's that voice of the customer. And you were able to engage your employees at really high adoption rates. And you develop this. That's what makes it more meaningful to people like us as a business partner. Can you talk a little bit about the Say It With NEOGOV initiative and how it's boosted your adoption, specifically around the journal entries at the Sheriff's Office?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So this was kind of a crazy idea that I had when we first implemented with Perform. We were very obviously focused on teaching and training our sergeants and our lieutenants and our supervisors. Here's how you create journal entries. Here's how you do this and that. So once we got everybody up and running in the system and everybody kind of felt a certain comfort level with it, I really wanted to jump on that continuous feedback train again and get people using the journal entries. It's another thing that's going to help them with their evals. But again, it's going to foster that conversation between supervisors and employees. So I created this Say It With NEOGOV campaign. And what I did was I challenged the agency to do at least 2 journal entries on every single subordinate for a week. And I also encouraged those that aren't supervisors to be leaving at least 2 journal entries for other employees throughout the entire month of April. And I made up some fun little PowerPoints about how to use it and how to do it and why it's so important. And then I sent out some flyers, and then twice a week I would just send out those little reminders to the agency and say, hey, somebody did something great. Please go say it with NEOGOV. Hey, supervisors, make sure you're hopping into NEOGOV and leaving some journal entries for your subordinates. And it kind of took on a life of its own. I kind of chuckled because they really got into it and they got super competitive with it, which I can't wait for more in-depth reporting on journal entries, because I had like sergeants calling me and emailing me going, I left 20 journal entries this week. I bet you I'm winning. I bet you I'm leaving the most journal entries of any sergeant. I was like, yes, gold star, you are absolutely probably #1, even though I maybe didn't know who was #1. But they were all #1 if they called me and asked. But it kind of took on this funny little life of its own, and people got very competitive about who could catch people doing great things and who was going to leave a journal entry for somebody when somebody did something really well. And I chuckled because it almost became a catchphrase around the agency, and it really took on a life of its own, because now when you'll hear a sergeant say, oh, great job on that call, your de-escalation techniques were really great, this and that, you'll just see the deputy turn around and say it with NEOGOV, Sarge. And it took on its a whole life of its own, and it's just a saying that lives around the agency now. So when somebody gives you a compliment, you're just yelling, say it with NEOGOV at them, so that you're getting those good notes in there. And a couple years later, it's still going, and everyone's still saying, say it with NEOGOV every time they get great feedback. So I always said, I told my boss, I was like, well, that was it. I'm good. I can retire. I left a catchphrase here in the agency. I'm ready to go. But yeah, it was great. It was a great engaging campaign for everybody.
All right, we're gonna get some T-shirts done up with this to make sure to share around there. So we'll do that with the logo on there. I do love how you've gamified, taken the software piece and gamified this. And when you think of our workforce now, and we just talked about that diversification of our workforce, and we have a lot of people close to or at that retirement age, and we also have a lot of people that just turned of maybe legal drinking age in their respective states and stuff. There's a really wide delta there between our workforce. The one consistent throughout there is the importance of technology and what we do. And they're doing, we're all doing so much things with our phones nowadays. And quite frankly, when we know more than half, sometimes as high as 2/3 of job applications for positions are being done from individuals' phones, they're using that technology. And I love how you're tying this all together, but you're having some fun with it. The unintended, I wouldn't call it consequence, but benefit from this is there's the healthy competition. Not that we have, that's not a competitive environment in law enforcement with each other,
No.
but never happens. But
Nope.
good thing. But this is the importance of the technology in the public sector, and we have to put in context when our current or prospective employees are used to doing everything utilizing technology, and we hand them some type of a paper process or something that's clunky that requires extra steps. It's not going to promote the engagement, and you run at risk of either not getting them as an employer or maybe not keeping them because you're like, I'm going to go someplace where they're going to make that investment. So love what you're doing here, Julie, and this has just been a great discussion all around in what you've done for the agency down there.
Thanks.
As we're starting to wrap up here, I believe, Alex, we left a little time for Q&A if there was anything from the audience, so we'll turn it back over to you.
Perfect. Thank you. That was wonderful. Yes, I'm going to go ahead and look through the questions now. If you have questions, please continue to add them in, and we'll get to as many as we can. We've got a little bit of time here to talk through them. So let's see. All right. So one person asked what payroll system allows for integration with this process. So we do support many payroll systems. We have an API that will connect many different payroll systems with Perform. So that will be a question for your account manager or representative, but we will definitely get back to you and verify that. But we're pretty flexible, so we can accommodate a lot of those needs.
Very, very system agnostic from that perspective, and being able, we want to do what's the right thing for the agency. And sometimes, quite frankly, there's a reason that a current system is what has to stay there, and we know that. And because we understand local government, we're going to make it easy and just find a bridge there to make sure the information can flow back and forth.
Yep. A question for Julie. Do these classifications align with how employees are classified in the HRIS?
So in terms of, I guess my question would be in terms of what? So the way that we assigned the groups when we were implementing Perform is we took anybody with subordinates and we labeled them as managers. And then we took anybody that was a certified employee without subordinates and they became a certified, and then everyone else was a civilian. So our competencies that we attached to our evaluations were grouped by one of those three roles. So all of our class specs came in. So all of our different job descriptions or class specifications came in, and we assigned them as either a manager, certified, or a civilian, and then assigned the competencies to one of those three roles. So it was really easy. So, we might have, 100 different certified class specs, but they're all getting those same 10 competencies on their eval because those are what we assigned for that group.
Perfect. There wasn't more context, so we'll leave it at that. But please, if you want to follow up, definitely drop your question in the chat. Another question for Julie. So how did the managers develop the competencies for each role? Was there a general agreement?
Yes, so that's a great question. So when we were implementing, our implementation manager, who was amazing, gave us a library of what our cohorts were doing. And they said, okay, these are what other agencies are using. And it was a plentiful list. So we started to narrow it down to what we thought would be applicable to our agency. And then once we got it down to a more reasonable number, our command staff sat and had conversations amongst what we call our management team. And they poured through all of those available options and honed which ones they liked. There were a couple that we just created that we thought were more specific to our agency. But we were provided a list as a starting point, which was fantastic because that was a great jumping off point for us to figure out what those competencies were going to be.
Nice. Awesome. There was a question if the recording will be sent out after the event, and that is a yes. We will send out the recording and a few other materials for you to everyone who is registered, not just attendees, but if you registered and couldn't make it, of course, you're probably not on here, but you will also receive the recording. So don't worry about that, and you can share it with anyone. It will also be available on our website, so easy access wherever you go. Another question, will this system work with other performance systems? We have a management by objective type system and not so much competency focused. That one we'll have to follow up with you on. I'm not Gary knows the answer, but we will definitely flag that and have one of our reps follow up with you.
I think I'd like to dive a little deeper into that one to better understand it.
Yep. Another question for Julie. How do you motivate directors over programs to hold supervisors under them accountable for the performance reviews? And this could also go to Gary too, if you have insights there.
I'll start off, I guess. So a lot of that came in with the implementation. A lot of that was the buy-in. You know, we're going to make your life easier. So you guys have to do your part, like Gary said. But we not only made the eval process easier, so it wasn't as hard for people to hold supervisors accountable because we simplified the eval process so much and we trimmed down the eval. So for them, they feel like they're winning something, you know what I mean? Like coming from where they were to where they are now. So it's not such a tug and pull to try to get them to do that, but we do the automated notifications to the person who is responsible for rating that eval. And then once they hit an overdue status, their supervision gets emails also that their subordinates are overdue in these tasks. And, you know, by day 6 or 7, they're tired of getting the email that their sergeant has an overdue task. So they're calling them and say, hey, man, go get this done. So it takes the work off of us having to follow up and chase people because their supervisors are getting that auto notification. We might not even be aware of it if we're not going to look for it in a report first. And it's all being taken care of by the chain of command, which is so nice.
I think the only thing I would add on to that is building on it and just saying leverage the technology, work harder, or work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, we say that a lot. There was one comment saying older generations appreciate being told how they're doing and where they stand too. So yes, I think everyone appreciates that.
Everybody does.
Yep.
Everybody wants that pat on the back, and that's fantastic.
Absolutely. Someone asked, is Julie willing to share her training PowerPoints, etc.? So we will share, Julie was nice enough to provide her LinkedIn information. We will share that on the next slide once we're done with the Q&A, and you'll also be emailed all this information. So absolutely, she's open to you reaching out. And yes, meeting any questions there for her too.
I do have some training flyers that I created when we were implementing, just kind of like quick overviews of like what our journal entries look like, and we have some sample evals and stuff like that. So if anybody's interested in any of that, I will happily spam you with all of my stuff. Just send me a message or email me and I will get that out to you, and at least it can kind of give you an idea of what it looks like for us here at MSO.
Wonderful. Someone asked, does everyone in your state agency need a NEOGOV login to participate in the review process? I believe so. There could be some exceptions there, Gary, unless you know.
Yeah, they would just need to have an email address to be able to log into that. Yep.
Someone asked if you use the Learn module to assign training. So I'm sure you can talk a little bit about that, Jim.
We actually just demoed it with Mitch the other day. It's fantastic. I'm hoping down the road we'll have all NEOGOV products, but you know, it depends on, you know, budget and the needs of the agency and that sort of thing. The LMS system is amazing. It provides so many opportunities to expand on that training and development section. You probably need to sit in on a webinar with somebody that's running the program now, but we have spent some time with Mitch reviewing it, and hopefully down the road it's coming. Then maybe I'll do one of these for Learn.
That would be awesome. We would love to have you back. Someone asked, how do new hires get added into evaluation programs? So you can maybe cover a little bit about the onboard process integration there too.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have NEOGOV Insight, NEOGOV Onboard, and NEOGOV Perform. Perform is our newest one. So when somebody applies in the Insight system and eventually they're hired, they are auto-fed into our onboard system. And then once all their onboarding is complete, they just seamlessly slide over into Perform. Their account's created, matching their ID number, all their onboarding documents and stuff. So it's fairly, I mean, Perform-wise, it's hands-off for us. They're created. And we do have that API with our payroll system, which is fantastic. So their role, their class spec, all of that happens automatically. So there is no manually putting anybody in Perform for us.
I love to hear that. Someone asked what partners within the county assisted with the setup for the system, for example, mapping out all the workflows.
What's that?
What partners in the county assisted with the setup of the system, like mapping out the workflows for the evaluations and such?
So we're a sheriff's office, so we did that ourselves. The county is looking at Perform right now, actually. So that was entirely us and our command staff and the conversations with everyone amongst the agency. We decided what that workflow was going to look like. For us, we have the person rating the evaluation, then their supervisor does a review of it, and then it's released to the employee. And then there's a final sign off for the supervisor so they can go back and review any comments that the employee may have made on their evaluation. It's pretty simple. It runs through really quickly. It's all timed and due dated, but that was completely our design.
Let's see, we have a few more, just a couple more minutes. I can fit in a couple more questions. Someone asked, does your IT help with the API? I will say that the NEOGOV team handles that process completely. Our implementation team will set up the API and everything. You wouldn't have to actually do that yourself at the organization. So we'll help you with all of that. How many evaluation programs are currently in use?
So we have two currently. We have a probationary evaluation program, and that we do our evals quarterly. So it's set up at the 90-day mark, the one, so on and so forth. It goes through the year. So those 4 quarters are automatically generated based on that employee's probation date. And then we have our annual process. We can set it up so it's one big process, and it just, once somebody completes their 4 quarters, the next annual, they're automatically in there. And that is something I have built and I am currently testing. So hopefully by the end of the year, I'll have that baby up and running just for ease of use. But we did want, when we started, a little more control and a little more time to get comfortable and make sure everything was working the way we liked and decide what was best for us going forward. So we're at that point now where we're ready to just make it one big evaluation program, but right now we do have the probationary and the annual, but I expect that'll be one by the end of the year.
Nice, perfect. So a couple questions. Our Perform does, we do have an API for ADP and PeopleSoft. Those are 2 big ones that we know we always have people interested in. Another quick question, what's the difference between Perform and Power Ready, which is our public safety Power DMS field training solution? So that only handles the field training process, the documentation and such that goes along with the law enforcement field training. But Perform is more focused on actual evaluations and, you know, those annual or monthly, quarterly evaluation processes. So there is a difference. We can definitely reach out with more information about that. That was a very high level, not very good synopsis, but yes, there's a big difference between the 2. But we are at time now, so I want to go ahead and thank Julie and Gary for their time. You shared some amazing insights, so thank you so much. Real quick, if you want to get connected with them, there is their LinkedIn information. Again, this will be sent out after the webinar, so don't worry, you don't have to write this down really quick. You will get the information after. So thank you all for joining us again. And just a quick few reminders. Like I said, all this will be shared after, along with a case study with Julie in Manatee County. So please keep an eye out for that in your inbox tomorrow morning. We have another webinar coming up pretty soon, so we thought we would let you know if you're thinking about or interested in our HRIS solution. 2 customers will be sharing their experience on May 7th, so you can scan this QR code to go ahead and register or visit our website. And lastly, there will be a quick survey, probably 2 minutes, that pops up right after this event. So we would love to hear your feedback, anything you would like to see in the future, anything you thought went well or didn't go well. And yeah, thank you all for your time. Thanks for joining us today. And thank you, Julie and Gary. Loved hearing your stories, so we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.